the student is right there on the battlefield. And what could be more disturbing than that? But in accepting the principles that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita, battlefield becomes yet another place in order to do one's dharma. And when one does one's dharma, one's aligned. And when we're aligned, then we're rightly situated and happy. So, yeah, that's why I like principles. You can carry them around, use them anytime. Does anybody remember any of the principles? Just, it won't be on a SAT or anything anytime soon, but just curious. If not, I'm going to go through them today and we can look at them. Well, look at that, Premanishta.
I remember the last one we did, the sincerity, and the title was Sincerity, the perfume of heart.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us. That one definitely works. No question about it. And it's also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as one of the main principles by which one's never waylaid. If one has sincerity, whatever the external circumstances, we don't get pushed under. Well, I'll just let's do as a reminder what receive means. It comes from Latin. Re means back, and capere means to take. So take something back. And really, the whole idea behind spiritual principles is to come back to or reclaim our original identity. When we live under false pretenses, under a false identity, then there's a cognitive dissonance and a feeling of strife because we're out of alignment. But when we come into our real identity, we receive or we recapere, which means we take back who we are really. That's a reassuring element of the teachings, don't you think? That we already are something. We don't have to become something new. We just need to we need to uncover, recapere, take back who we really are. What do you think? Do you do you like the etymology? On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being it's fantastic. Only JM likes it. I should do some more entertainment. Okay. Well, one thing that's always fun is welcoming anyone who happened to wander onto this Zoom for any reason. If you came here thinking it was a business meeting somewhere, don't go away. Just stay for a little while. See how it goes. If somebody invited you and you'd like to have a nice exchange with that person, or if you're the one who invited somebody, maybe you'd like to introduce him or her so they can say hey, Hey, just say hey. Uh-oh, Krishna Saka is silent, so it
Yeah,
might mean there's nobody new here today.
yeah.
We're all
Either
new.
you.
Come here to renew ourselves, so we all feel new every time we come on, right?
Yes, yes. So yeah, if you are new here or after a long time, please feel free to say hi. I would love to hear from you.
Or if you're tired of getting pushed around by the material world and you're not going to take it anymore, you can also say something. I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm going to take up spiritual practice. Okay, Subhadra's into it. Thanks, Subhadra. Great. Well, I'm going to stop at intervals for any comments or if anybody'd like to say hey. And I'm going to go through quite a few slides today because today's a review of the principles of receptivity. We already know what it means. Take back your real identity, receive. It also means that we are receivers. There are gifts that are abundantly available everywhere to us at all times, but we have to be in the right attitude to receive them. And that's our job as living entities. We're eternal. We don't have to work to just maintain ourselves, but we can work in the world to uncover the great gifts that are always available to us at every moment. And those are gifts that are so great that once we receive them, we feel that they're, although we may have a desire to have more of them, they're extremely satisfying. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the sixth chapter, Krishna talks about the feeling one gets when one achieves self-realization. In fact, I'm going to look it up really quick for you, just as a preamble. I'm typing into my what's called Veda base. It's a source of knowledge. And I'm writing in the Sanskrit verse that says Yam Labvam Chaparam. And it happens to be in the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And it goes like this. Are you ready for a little philosophy this early in the show? Maurice is ready. Okay. Radhakripa's ready. I know Jonathan's ready. He's always ready. Okay. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, let me break the word down because it's Sanskrit. Sama means complete, and dhi means when one's mind is fixed on one thing. So completely fixed. In the stage of perfection or trance called samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there's no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. What did you hear? What's what stuck out for you in that paragraph describing the happiness of the self and self-realization?
You can unmute and share or type in the chat box. Operators are on standby.
Sharing, just remember, sharing means caring. See the self with the pure mind. Yes, Sundar, thank you. I didn't even know Sundar was here. That's always good news. Thanks, Sundar. Yeah, to see the self with a pure mind. As living beings, we're seers, and we can actually see ourselves. And the mind is an instrument, but when it's pointed outwardly, or when it's full of the imagery that we've taken in from the material world and it becomes opaque, we can't see ourselves. What else, JM?
A few more. Prem Minister says there is no greater gain than this.
Yeah, when's the last time you felt like that? Because oftentimes when we get something, we feel like, is that it? I thought it was going to be better than that. Sometimes shopping online, I'll look at I always like to look at the people who hated the item first. And because that way it usually convinces me not to take it. There's always some little thing wrong with it. It didn't last long. The wheels fell off, whatever. And that's the nature of the material world. Whatever we get here, whatever seems to be the thing that'll actually make me happy, and then it doesn't. But this is the opposite, a sense that there's no greater gain. That's notable. Thank you for bringing that out, Premanisha. And Radhakripa,
Yeah, Radhagopal says unlimited happiness one can experience.
yeah, that's a a phrase, maybe it's hackneyed because it's used over and over again, unlimited happiness. I saw walking through the airport the other day, the Ghirardelli chocolate sign. It made some claim like that about a chocolate bar. And then of course you've got Coca-Cola. It says open a bottle of happiness. And that'd be a neat trick, right? If you actually open a bottle of Coca-Cola and you felt unlimited happiness. So there is some idea here in this world that there's going to be happiness and we're going to receive something great, but it doesn't necessarily come through the channels we expect it's going to come through. And that's one of the points of becoming a receiver. How do we receive the kind of happiness that's being described here? I'm going to read it one more time. It's worth repeating. And then if you hear anything that, if your ear picks up anything from this, oh, Shamal Ghosh.
Yeah, he just wants to have a discussion. But Krishna Saka,
You posted it.
yeah,
Okay.
shall I read it? Or
Oh, yeah, go ahead. That way I can listen this time.
Krishna Saka says, in the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In the joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact.
Yeah, it's good to have a description of it. Just two more two more minutes brainstorming on this. What did you hear? That's okay, Shaman Ghosh. Definitely meet with you. Okay, what else did you hear? Shir Chor Gopinath, you got a whole ashram there. You got to contribute something.
I'm just reminded of like that sentence, being situated in this such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. In the sense, just an analogy, like how people, when they are dealing with electricity, they always are on some wooden or some kind of uh, platform which does not conduct, so that they are safe, kind of just to be safe in case they are working. So like that, if you are have this safety net around you, then you can deal with the material world knowing that despite everything that can come up, at least you won't be impacted because you're protected.
I like the metaphor. Thanks. Yeah, I've seen in India. In fact, Chakadola, he was doing the electrical panel in our room, and he was standing on two bricks. Of course, he was barefoot, but that was enough installation. It seems he didn't step off, I guess. Sakalas Subag's got his hand up.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I like the analogy made by James Prabhu. So, what I understand from this statement is, I think the kind of practice that we try to inculcate in our day to day, which is not related to any of the conditions that we are in or related to, then that can help us to be focused on the practices that we are doing, and that can, like, whenever we are high or down, this will not affect us, as we are trying to focus on these practices, which are um, not dependent on the life situation.
That's a good point, and it's one of the main points of the Bhagavad Gita is equanimity. It has the word equa in it. It means to be balanced in all circumstances, as you put, whether you're high or low, whatever the situation may be, because we have our duty to do, we continue. We don't consider victory, gain, loss, or defeat. Well, Thank you, everyone. Oh, look, we got more. Krishaka said, from material contact arises all miseries. And we could also take that to the philosophical point from the Bhagavad Gita that all miseries arise within the mind, or at least all suffering. 'Cause suffering means to hold on to the things that happen to us. It comes from a Latin root, means to hold on to things. And true freedom from all miseries. That's what you picked up. Now, because I have a huge stack of slides, and again, for those of you just joined, this is a review. That means lots of fun, no hard work. Here we go. Akinchana, we talked about this, is a really lovely Sanskrit word. It was used, it's used in many places, but one of the places that I had mentioned previously in this was a queen. Her name was Kunti, and she went through plenty of ups and downs in her life, but she recommended that one remain a kinchana. This is called means not, and kinchana means something, sort of a blank slate principle that think of it like this. You come into the world with nothing, you leave with nothing. So in the interim, it's how you use things. It's not what you take with you. And I may have mentioned the story of Alexander the Great. Does anybody recall the story of Alexander the Great? And James thinking, you're never going to get through these slides if you keep doing this.
I'm
Alexander,
good.
okay, you're good. I know you're good. Better than good. So Alexander the Great was before he left this world, in other words, before he died, he had put out an edict for his funeral. He said, I want you to take my gold from my treasury and scatter it along the pathway that takes me to where I'm going to be buried. Next, he said, I want my hands to be outside of the coffin. So they carved little grooves in there so his hands could be hanging out of the coffin as they carried him. And he said, thirdly, I want the best physicians in my whole kingdom to be the pallbearers and carry the coffin. So that sounds enigmatic, doesn't it? It's one of the questions you get on your SAT. Why did he do these things? Jan, we better come back into the room because this is a quiz. This is getting serious here. Why did Alexander the Great want to have his hands exposed from his coffin as he was being carried? For 20 points, that's a lot. Who would like to say?
So they can make sure he was dead.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Always a wise thing to do. What else? What else? Chuck.
To show that he couldn't bring anything with him.
Yeah, his hands were empty. That's right. You come into the world with nothing, you leave with nothing. It's like, no, nothing in my hands. Apparently, he was a wise person. Okay, and then what about the gold scattered along the pathway all the way to his burial site? Who wants to say?
That it's all gonna be left here
Yeah, you
and
leave
not
behind.
taking it. Yeah.
Whatever's in your treasury, you just leave it behind, right? And how about he had his royal doctors, the best in the whole kingdom. He wanted them specifically as the pallbearers. This one's a little harder. It's 30 points.
So that they couldn't even save them.
Yeah. Your best doctors, can you save me? Add another 5 minutes onto my life. And they say, oh, I'm really sorry, can't help you. So, yep, that's it. And a transcendentalist is one who thinks like that. And it's not a morbid type of meditation, actually, thinking about death all the time, but it's an awareness that I'm just passing through here. And that really makes one a kinshana. It means I don't really have anything here. Whatever I claim to be mine is an illusory idea. And one of the causes of suffering is that I'm attached to various things and I think, oh, this is mine. And when it gets old or when it wears out or when we lose it somehow, then we feel this great sense of suffering. But a transcendentalist uses the Akinchana principle and thinks that none of it's mine. Now, it doesn't mean that we should live in abject poverty or give up everything, but it means to have this awareness that none of it belongs to me. Rather, it's paraphernalia to be used in a higher service. Okay, I'm going back to the slides. Really, I am, Jim. So the number 4 slide gives the definition of this Sanskrit word. There's kinchana. Kinchana means something, and you put an A in front of the word, and it changes its meaning, reverses its meaning. So something too, I don't have anything. I have nothing. And amazingly, that's a liberating experience. And number 5 slide says, the less you claim to have or know, the more you're open to learn, the more grateful you are for what you get. And 6, increase your appetite. You know, they say hunger is the best spice. Have you ever heard that? And if you've ever had something delectable that was spiced just perfectly and you think, oh, I have to have that again and again, it's so good. But then hunger, that's the best spice because when you're hungry, even if it doesn't have any spice, you go, look, this is fantastic. How'd you make this? Like, I didn't. I just chopped it up. There's nothing in it. But if you're that hungry, then you can appreciate so many things. And so there's this sense of hunger that you get from a kinchana, of not being full already, that I already know everything. And in Ayurveda, you know Ayurveda? The word Ayur means lifespan. You get one when you're born. As soon as you're born, although they don't put it on your birth certificate how long you're going to live, there are some insightful ways that one can discern, okay, how long will I live? Insurance companies do that. They have actuary charts and they tell you, hey, here's how long you're probably going to live. And some astrologers will tell you too, although it could be a little dicey. Nonetheless, everyone has a lifespan, and Ayurveda is the kind of medicine that helps you to expand your lifespan. And in Ayurveda, they say that you can tell how healthy you are by how strong your appetite is. So, number 7, embrace helplessness. And that might sound a little scary, but actually, it's when we pretend that we're okay and uh, that we're not vulnerable, then we have a false sense of security. And there's a verse like this in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Shukadev, now he is a great sage, and he traveled alone, and he also, of course, people followed him around because they wanted to hear what he had to say. And he lived very simply. And he talks about how we should be aware of the fact that we really can't save ourselves in this world. And he names different ways we might think that we could be protected. Maybe if I have enough money, I'd be protected. Maybe my family members will protect me. And maybe the government will protect me. But he was saying you can't depend on any of these entities because ultimately we're helpless. And being helpless or realizing one's helplessness, it doesn't put one in a fearful state. Rather, if one has an awareness that I'm being supported by the Supreme, by Krishna, and we're then open to ask for help, it's counterintuitively satisfying to recognize our helplessness. Okay, slide number 8. And I'm going through these quite quickly because, again, it's a review. Manage expectations. We have expectations, they lead to disappointments. And when we don't expect anything, we receive much more because everything seems to be a miraculous gift that comes to us when we don't expect. Do you like that? Expectations lead to disappointments? Or actually, the saying goes like this: expectation is the mother of disappointment. I was once talking to a friend of mine who teaches a class in management, business management at Chapman University. That's in Irvine, California. And I was asking him, so teach me all the tenets of management. And we were going over this a point about managing expectation, or I was saying, lower your expectations. He said, no, actually, the phrase is manage your expectations. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives these sweeping statements that, well, from the topmost place in the universe down to the very bottom, the circumference included, everything is temporary. It comes and goes. Don't think that you're going to find some refuge here in the material world. Everyone is in the same boat and going through these same experiences of losing whatever they have, apparently. We never lose ourselves. But if we expect that everything's going to change and we embrace that idea, I've had that experience just when I feel some sense of loss or a thing it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, then I remember this and I say, oh, well, why should I expect anything? I'm not the supreme controller. Anything can go in any direction. And I should be more absorbed in what is rather than what should be. And this is managing expectations means that in any moment, given moment, you're aware that the world is full of abundant gifts. Okay, number 9, how to open to bounteous gifts. This is our promise through this slideshow. And we go to the teachings of the Golden Monk, also known as Chaitanya. And he said, when he first took monkhood and he went out with some of his followers, and he turned around to them after they had left the city gates, and he said, did you bring anything with you? And they said, no, you didn't tell us to. He said, good. I want you to observe the world and see that it's filled up with food and wealth, but every living being can only get what his or her quota is. And I was noticing that this morning. It was in the garden in my backyard. There's a Fuji apple tree and a fig tree right next to one another, and a pathway that walks through them. And I just happened to catch in the morning sunlight a little spider was hanging down, and I don't want to bump into him and ruin his morning, so I avoided. And then I was watching how adroitly he was able to put out a web and then scale to the top of the tree, tiny little thing. And I was thinking he has everything he needs up there. It's all provided for him. What to speak of the expertise of how to do that high wire act at the top of a tree, just with a little thread that comes out of, I don't know, I should do a little study of spiders. I was thinking of it, but I didn't have time. How they emit some kind of fluid and it becomes a thread. That's all provided by nature. Oh, look, Amit. Please go ahead.
Um, Hare Krishna from Calgary, Alberta. I have a question. How do you manage expectations while having goals?
Well, first of all, if you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? So it's reasonable to have worthy goals for one's life, which help to keep one aligned. And along the way, we may manage our expectations by staying in the process rather than only being fixated on the result. In other words, you can take goals as helpful in what they make of you to achieve them. And it's in the process that you grow rather than, okay, I got there to the goal. So let's just say if you're doing some exercise and someone says, do some push-ups, and you start doing push-ups and you're being tested on it, let's say, because you want to get into the fire department or something, and they don't tell you how many, then you might look up at intervals and say, when can I stop? But if they say do 10 or do 20, then you have your mind fixed on a goal and you can push for it. And when you're able to do that, you're able to be more steady and stay in the process and grow. So as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says you have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you don't have the right to claim the result of it. So that's the attitude of having a goal, but then not having expectations, because even if you have the sense that you made mistakes along the way, you'll still grow from making the mistakes. Your expectation isn't that I will get the thing right away. Or even if you have goals, in a very practical way, you have to manage your expectation of how long it's going to take. For instance, if you want to learn to play a musical instrument, if you think you're going to learn the violin overnight, most people will be sadly disappointed. Maybe there's an exception somewhere. One person who learned the violin quite well in about a year. I was really surprised. But that's another way of looking at it, how to manage expectation. Does that help, Amit?
It helps a lot. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. That's great. Okay, I'm still motoring along here, JM, because the golden monk, and I told the story, he went out and he said, observe. And this is something we can do. Observe the world. Even Jesus said that. Go in the field, look at the birds, see how they're taken care of. They know how to fly. They didn't go to flying school. They just have it. And they're also provided with bountiful food, at least in my backyard. They have lots of insects and bugs and worms and things like that to eat. Okay, so I'm all the way on number 11 now, JM. So here we are at slide number 11, which gives this admonition-like statement, which is be a receiver. You think of your human body as an instrument, and it's specifically meant to receive spiritual vibration, spiritual knowledge, and connection. We can actually think of yourself as the apparatus itself that can be tuned in such a way that you can have communion with your original source and with the spiritual world, even as you live in the material world. I have a friend when I was a kid who had a ham radio. Have you ever heard of that? I didn't even know what it stands for, HAM. Somebody can look it up. Subhadra probably knows. But uh, you you can, if you had a ham radio, you had to have a license for it and a big antenna in your backyard, and you could communicate with people who also had a set on the other side of the world. Of course, you had to speak their language too. But our body's like that. It's meant to receive spiritual knowledge, and we can make that connection. That's part of the lifestyle of that is the lifestyle of bhakti yoga, is to tune one's mind, tune one's body so that you're in contact with the ultimate, the supreme, called Krishna. So receive means able to take. Are you able to take? That's in slide number 12. And one of my favorite statements, quotations from Louis Pasteur. I carry this around with me all the time because it's motivating. Great discoveries come only unto the prepared mind. And being in preparation mode can be extremely inspiring, because when we're thinking, we're preparing our minds for great discoveries. Then whatever practice we're doing doesn't appear to be drudgery. We know we're in preparation. And uh, as slide 14 says, if you're not prepared for them, meaning referring back to the gifts of the world, great ideas and opportunities will pass you by. You just don't see them. And you may notice if somebody doesn't have a trained eye, they may not know what a valuable gem is, and they might just throw it away. My father used to, as a hobby, collect rocks, and he knew what to look for. He had a little rock hammer. We go hiking in different places. He'd pull out some things, put it in a little bucket, and he'd bring it home. And I thought, that's just a dirty, stupid little rock. And he said, no, you don't know what's inside. And he had in his garage a rock tumbler. And he'd put these rocks in there. It had a solution of sand and water, I think. I'm not sure exactly all that was in there, but it would run for days. You go around and around, and you could hear all of the rocks on the sand moving. And then after they were polished, as it was called, he'd take them out, and they were beautiful. And the reason that he was able to find them was because he had studied the science a little bit. He knew which kind of rocks to look for and where, so he could pull them out. So in a similar way, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a verse spoken by the boy saint Prahlad. He was 5 years old at the time. He says, believe it or not, that geologists, they know where to find wealth in the ground because their eyes are trained for it. And so because they know, my sister was a geologist. That's what she did. That she taught geology at Western Washington University in Bellingham. You know where that is, Krishna Saka. You go there all the time. And she, whenever we go on hikes, she'd give a commentary about what the contour of the land meant. If there was any sedentary levels, she'd say, "Oh, that era was like about 10 million years ago, and this one was this," and so forth. So the mind has to be prepared, and one of the ways that we prepare our minds is to take higher knowledge. For instance, from Bhagavad Gita. When I first read the Bhagavad Gita, it changed my worldview. After I read Bhagavad Gita and I walked around, I was interpreting the world through the lens of Bhagavad Gita, and I was mostly, or at first, what I was seeing were case studies of the modes of material nature. That's one of the main topics in the Bhagavad Gita is what the mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness looks like in people, in environments, in oneself, and so forth. And so I saw that. So if you prepare your mind, then you see the world in a completely different light. Okay, 15, what's most valuable, things or qualities? And we have that pan scale in the middle. We've done experiments before during other discussions about if your house catches on fire, what do you go for first? And what's most valuable in our lives? And it turns out that what we are is more important than what we have. And then going back to the concept in number 16 about preparation, deliberate and find out what's most valuable. If you have a list of things that aren't that valuable and you're working towards them, then you're going to be really disappointed when you get there. So learn to see and seize opportunities by having your priorities straight and then have a process to enact them. Meaning that you're able to use the knowledge you get in order to extract from every moment of your life the real gift that's there, which is our communion with the Supreme. That's what yoga means. And here's a few qualities to be more specific. That last 1 minute was quite general. Qualities that prepare you to receive. Well, we talked about hunger, right? If you're hungry and someone says time to eat, then you're ready. If you're not hungry, someone says time to eat and said, I'll skip it. Humility. Amazingly, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text number 8 through 12, there's a long list, 20 items that prepare you for knowledge. And the first one on the list, drum roll please, humility. Humility. Humility creates a kind of hunger. We're open for anything. And in humility, we may have this sense of, I really don't know anything. Doesn't mean that you have to be a dysfunctional person, but just means internally you're aware of the fact that you're very limited. And the more open you are to hearing from authorities who can impart knowledge to you, then the more you can absorb and the more you can be prepared. And the other one I call embracing the edge. Don't just stay in your comfort zone. Great things happen when you put yourself out in a well-reasoned way onto the edge. Try to take some risks for your self-realization. 18, everything moves from subtle to gross. This is an important reminder of how we receive in this world. Trees are an example. Almond trees take 7 years to start producing fruit. And if you know the rule of the universe, that everything starts from a seed form, whether it's a thought seed or it's a physical seed from a tree, you have to know how to handle it. And it starts in a very subtle form. So one of the ways to be receptive to the world is to attend to the subtleties of it, of the world, which means that be open to seed ideas. And if you nurture them properly, they'll grow into a tree that will support you. Try to wax poetical on that. The mighty redwood starts with a tiny seed. They're so small. Redwood seeds seem disproportionate to the size of the tree. If you've ever seen them, they're really small, but the tree is enormous. And so we can remember that whatever we take in seedling form, that's going to grow. When in the next slide, 20, there's a principle of receptivity. Failure is the pillar to success. Pray tell, Vaisheshika, why is it a principle of receptivity? Because there's value in failure. When you're set out on a worthy journey towards a worthy goal and there are missteps, don't waste them. They're the most valuable thing that can happen because you then can, in retrospect, examine where there's gaps and you can fill them in. And I give the metaphor in the next slide, 21, about composting. Composting transforms waste into life. So there's the miracle in the ecology of the earth. When you walk through a forest, you notice that things are morphing just like they are everywhere else. But in the forest, because everything's organic, you can see how one tree that falls and decomposes then becomes fodder for other life. Other trees grow out of it and so forth. So whatever mistakes we make, that can also be composted. And slide 22 talks about how all aspects of our lives have a similar cycle. And 23, we're going on with this organic idea. When it's time to let go, compost turns to knowledge, turns to fertilizer for new seeds and growth. That's why it's considered that if people live long enough, they're supposedly wise. It's not always the case, but in general, older people tend to be wiser because just by dint of the fact that they've been through so many things and they've seen them from beginning to end, they've composted them. And so if we do that very deliberately in our lives, we're receiving lessons even from the missteps or even from the reversals. Even if we don't make a misstep, we're doing everything right and the wrong thing seems to have happened. We can compost that and remember something amazing is going to grow out of this. Okay, 24. Lying under heaps of discarded thoughts, empty dreams, disappointments, lost loves, and confusion. There's wisdom. At the very least, you can write a country song and talk about how your hound dog ran away. And then you've got text 25. Participate with and accelerate one of nature's miracles, the transformation of waste into life. 26. Sow uncommon seeds if you want an uncommon result. Quotes, we're giving quotes. Anne Lamott, she's a writer, really good writer, and she's written several books about writing because she teaches writing. And it says, time and showing up turn most messes to compost, and something surprising will grow. In fact, in the practice of writing, which I hope everyone does, it's a great means for self-actualization. She talks about how always try to go for messy, rough drafts. Don't try to get anything perfect. The, the more you can just get it on there and go for rough drafts that you don't like, they can always be transformed. Again, time and showing up. I love that part. Time and showing up turns most messes to compost, and something surprising will grow. So that can be encouraging, and it helps you to receive from the process rather than just becoming disappointed. Okay, 27, lessons. Make a productive space to put your mistakes and faults and then leave them alone to compost. This is synonymous with a verse from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that says, if you live your life in such a way that whatever happens to you, you consider it as fodder for growth, then you're situated in the best possible frame of mind. 28, even garbage becomes something rich and nourishing. The time factor. Scraps don't make good compost unless you let them sit 9 to 12 months, which can feel like an eternity. I took that from a book called Compost Everything. And that's a reassuring idea in and of itself. Things may have happened. They still may be raw. You know, if somebody did you wrong or something and it's still festering in your mind, put it in a box and let it compost. And it'll become rich, nourishing material. Everyone okay, or is this pace too fast? We're on slide 29. There's 87 slides to go altogether. Be radically proactive about any behavior that pays off in 10 years, James Clear says. Be radically proactive about any behavior that pays off in 10 years. We're talking about receptivity principles. How sweet to embrace the slow, effortless effort of the compost bin. I don't have to make it happen, it just will. Trust that time and oxygen will do their work and that they will even feed the next cycle of growth. I took this all from that book, Compost Everything. Here's Carl Jung. The ever-deepening, should be hyphenated, I think, descent into the, or maybe not, the ever-deepening descent, yes, it should be, into the unconscious suddenly becomes illumination from above. The ever-deepening descent into the unconscious suddenly becomes illumination from above. Take from those what you will. I don't have time to go into them, but I will stop in a minute for some comments. Surprise, it is transformed into fertile soil or the deep wisdom just waiting for its turn at supporting new roots, new shoots in its reach for the sun. Don't be afraid to discard, let something go, even if it breaks your heart a little. Okay, drinking from a fire hose principle. I'm going to stop for a minute. And what did you take away? Anything that you'd like to express, talk about? Okay, you're going to have to explain yourself, Subhadra.
I just feel like what I said. I'm just tired of having to compost and grow from it. I just want to take a break. It seems like my whole life I've been getting buried by compost.
Let's see. What does it mean to be buried by compost? Maybe there can be overwhelming sections of our life where we feel that too many lessons, maybe, and how do I focus? And that's valid. That can happen. There is a refuge from that feeling that, and I talked about this the other day when we had a meditation session at the center. And there are two personalities that come up in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And one of them was called Subhuti Roy. And there had been a turn of events in his life. He had been a manager, leader, and then by course of time, uh, geopolitical shift, he ended up as kind of a worker slave under the person who used to work under him. And then somebody got envious that, oh, he used to be in charge and wanted him killed, actually. His previous mentee didn't want to do that, but people were putting social pressure on him. So he kind of discredited Subhuti Roy, and he felt lost in his life. And he asked for advice from a lot of people, and they told him a lot of different things. And then he met the Golden Monk. And the Golden Monk said, focus on one thing. And that is, he talked about mantra meditation and chanting. Be self-contained. Don't feel overwhelmed. Just focus your mind on the chanting. Because he said that from that chanting process, uh, knowledge and detachment will naturally come. I experience it myself all the time. I just have to shut down. There's too many lessons, too many things happening. And you say one thing now. I'm just going to remember that term in the beginning, samadhi. D means to focus in one place, and sama, just give your complete attention. And I always find that whatever is stewing in my mind and whatever I'm trying to figure out and I can't figure it out and I feel overwhelmed by, if I give that exclusive attention to the chanting process, it's miraculous. I suddenly feel a little detached, then a little more detached. And then from that detached position, I have a perspective where I can look at it objectively and I think, oh yeah, there's a workaround here. And I mean, that's the preliminary benefit of that. So that overwhelming feeling, too many goals, too many lessons, too much compost. Lord Chaitanya, when he met Subhuti Roy, Subhuti Roy said, I'm confused about what to do. Lord Chaitanya said, just do this mantra. Don't do anything else. Don't just get everything from this one place. So that can help.
Yeah, that actually is what hooked me on the first thing you were talking about, freedom from material mental activities. That just sounds so attractive.
Doesn't it though? Definitely. Yeah, the mind's like a conveyor belt, little factory going on in there, manufacturing all kinds of problems and worries and so forth. So it's good just to have one place to resort to, which is I'm just going to take this shelter of the fact that God is in his name. And if I just repeat the name and meditate on it, then everything will be revealed one after another, everything that I need. Thanks,
Thank you.
Subhadra, for being vulnerable and stopping the flow of my flowery, poetical,
Thank you.
and sometimes even glib points. Yeah, what else do we have? We have a few minutes left. Let's take a few more. Michael is here? Fantastic. Anyway,
Yeah,
we got something from Shir Chor Gopinath. I'll let you do your job, Jam. Go ahead.
yeah, there are a few which are coming in. Nirali says, sometimes I want to compost, but it doesn't leave me. Good thing is that after long trials, it leaves.
It leaves.
Yes.
Sometimes I want to compost, but it doesn't leave me. Good things after some long trials. Yeah. Well, that's one of the points about composting. It takes a while. You just got to put it in there and forget it. I have a box right outside in my garden where I put any bona fide scrap. And it's a helpful, when I go traveling, I come back, I look in there, go like, what happened? It all turned to some rich thing. Go ahead, Jam.
Yeah, and then Shirashur says, Gopinath says, in regards to the quote, time and showing up turns most messes into compost, and something surprising will grow. It seems that steadiness creates a kind of quality out of quantity.
Ooh, nicely put. You should coin that and keep it. I like it a lot. Let's do Makela and then we'll call on Bryce for the close. And
Yeah.
I
Mikala says, I like the idea of finding a lesson and then putting mistakes, experiences, etc. in the box and letting it compost. We can replace the rumination over the mistake with some gratitude for the lesson and just move on while the composting just happens.
Wow, nicely put. That really encompassed the whole gamut of that section. Thank you very much, Makela. Okay, let's do Bryce and then Ayush.
Hey, Hare Krishna, could you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm using Bhakti Bryce's phone actually, but I'm Chandra Vadna Chaitanya Das. It's nice talking with you guys on here and stuff. I always get the invitations, and then I'm not always so quick to jump on the calls because of the time difference here on the East Coast versus you guys over on the West Coast. But nonetheless, I just want to say I appreciate the lecture and everything today, and the education and things that you impart. I like the simplicity of how you can state things so nicely, and then they make such an impact on my thinking, like in terms of like really stopping and paying attention to what it is you're saying, and then being able to make some sense of it. The Carl Jung quote that you had said, you said at the end, you said something like, "You take what you can from this, what you will, and all." But I was just wondering, like, what your own thought was on that, because you said you'd run out of time or something. So could you
Well,
elaborate
what
on
I
that?
get from it, it says the ever deepening descent into the unconscious suddenly becomes illumination from above. There's a way in which, counterintuitively, when we look inside and stop running for what's outside, we find of the wealth of our life, which is, first of all, we notice ourselves. This is in when Arjuna asked Krishna, what is the symptom of a self-realized person? He says, Prajahati ada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyeva manatushta stita pragnastadocide. The person is able to discover the satisfaction of their own self. I mean, that's the richest person on the planet. And, we're luminous. He also notes there, does Krishna in that verse, that the person who's aware of the fact that the conveyor belt is always running with all these ideas about how I'm going to be happy, and the person has the wherewithal to step back from it and just let it run because, like, nah, no thanks. I'm happy over here with myself. That's the illumination. What to speak of then an awareness, even an inkling that our self is connected to a super self. Then it's like an estuary where the ocean comes in and overwhelms the river. And that overwhelming feeling we described in the beginning, where Krishna talks about, oh yeah, you're gonna like this. You're like completely absorbed in this. Don't worry. It's not like the experiences you have in this world. It's such a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for tuning in from the East Coast. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, you too. Hare Krishna. Okay, Ayush.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. One thing I noticed or that I remembered from one of the slides was you had the foundation and the cracks in the walls, and that immediately reminded me of, I don't know if anyone here has heard the term kintsugi it's like from Japanese, I guess like, but basically they take broken pottery and then they rebuild it using like gold flakes, and it's supposed to represent rebirth, and that immediately reminded me of that. And the question I had related to the conversation today was, how do we build and foster or like restructure, reinvent, whatever you want to call it, the proper foundations for new growth, given, I guess, like human nature to remain bounded by like our past experiences? And then do we go about it in small actions, or do we just completely like break everything down and then completely rebuild from scratch?
Well, it's best to go to the root, and there are root practices. And one that I recommend is to read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day. That helps to understand the pieces, why there are pieces, and also, oh, what happened to my video? Sorry. It's probably a camera thing.
No worries.
And read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day, at least the translations, because these ancient shastras, the literatures, are meant to inform us and also help us to overcome any psychological anomalies that keep us from ourselves and from our relationship with our source, Krishna. And so that's really the secret. It's not a secret. It's Krishna says in the Gita, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. It's an open secret, but most people don't take advantage of it. So I highly recommend before you sleep at night, don't miss a day that you read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita and try to go through it again and again because it's self affirming and it's self-luminous. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to figure out how to put the pieces together. They just come together. That and the chanting I mentioned earlier, those two processes. If you're stranded on a desert island or in a cubicle somewhere, just read one chapter of Bhagavad Gita and chant with full attention. Thank you very much for such a nice question. Very helpful. Thanks, everybody. Sorry I went over time. In the Himalayas, the yogis are not so aware of time. They go somewhat by the sunlight, but deep in the caves. I've been in one. They call it a gufa. There's no, one of the best aspects of that is that you can't get any internet in there. It's underground. Many of them are underground caves. So they go in there, it's complete silence, no airplane noise, nothing. But when those yogis come out and they see one another on the high peaks of the Himalayas, they have a ritual to encourage one another. They put their hands high in the air and they say this phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. We could do it on this show to say goodbye, and I think I'm going to do it right now if you want to join me. Hari Bol!
Haribo!
Everybody. Great to see
Haribo.
you.
Thank you.
See you soon.